Number 8. Philadelphia building collapse. In 2013, Griffin Campbell Construction was hired to demolish an empty 4-story building located in Center City, Philadelphia. On June the 5th, with an 18-ton motorized excavator on site, the demolition was partly underway when a brick wall, left unbraced, toppled over onto an adjacent Salvation Army thrift store. Open to staff and shoppers at the time, the weight of the brick wall caused the roof to collapse, killing 6 people and injuring 14. One of the victims, Mariah Plekan, was trapped in the rubble for 13 hours before rescue crews could get her out. Trapped for so long, breathing toxic fumes, Plekan suffered lung and kidney problems and had to undergo a series of operations that left both her legs amputated. The contractor, Griffin Campbell, and the excavator operator, Sean Benschop, were charged with involuntary manslaughter. Campbell was sentenced up to 30 years in prison, while Benschop received a maximum sentence of 15. A judge found the Salvation Army and the building's developer financially liable for the collapse, and a settlement of $227 million for the victims was reached. Mariah Plekan was awarded the largest portion at $95.6 million. Number 7. Versailles wedding hall disaster. Caught on home film and camcorders, the worst building disaster in Israeli history occurred during the wedding of Keren and Asaf Dror on May the 24th of 2001. As they were crowded onto the dance floor of the Versailles wedding hall, the building collapsed on the hundreds of partygoers. Search and rescue efforts were dispatched immediately and continued for a day and a half. 26 people were pulled from the rubble, only 3 of whom survived. In total, 380 people were injured, including the bride, who suffered a serious pelvic injury that required surgery. It was found that poor design and actions on the owner's part were the probable causes. The building was originally designed to be 2 floors, but during construction, it was decided that another floor would be added on top. The wall supporting the final floor was designed to bear the load of a roof, and not that of an additional floor. Partitions were set up to help distribute the extra weight. A few weeks before the disaster, the owners chose to remove the partitions, causing the top floor to visibly sag. They attempted to fix the issue by filling it with grout in an attempt to even it out. This only added more weight to the already weakened structure. The stress of hundreds of bodies dancing and jumping ultimately caused the floor to give out. Despite not being involved in the design, construction, or modification of the building, it was the engineer and inventor of the construction method used on the building who was found responsible. He was charged with manslaughter and served 4 years in prison. Number 6. Xinjiang Express Hotel. In operation since June of 2018, the Xinjiang Express Hotel in China was transformed into quarantine housing for potential COVID-19 cases during the pandemic. At around 7:30 p.m. on March the 7th of 2020, the hotel suddenly collapsed with a resounding bang. Witnesses initially believed it to have been an explosion, and after the cloud of dust had settled, a landslide of debris was revealed. Of the 71 believed to be in the hotel at the time, 58 had been under observation quarantine. Despite hundreds of medics and firefighters desperately combing through the wreckage, 29 people lost their lives, and a further 42 were injured. An investigation found that 2 floors had been illegally added, topping the building over its maximum load limit. In January of 2020, while remodeling the basement from a supermarket into a restaurant, multiple heavily deformed columns were found. The owners proceeded to delay repairs until after the Chinese New Year, but even then, they had been so poorly done that no additional support was added. Number 5. Magnitogorsk building collapse. In the dead of winter on New Year's Eve 2018, a 10-story apartment block fell to the ground in the city of Magnitogorsk, Russia. The break reportedly originated around the 3rd floor. 48 units and the 95 people soundly sleeping within them were suddenly encapsulated in falling rubble. In those early hours, the outside temperature had reached a low of -11 Fahrenheit. Search and rescue crews numbering around 1,400 were dispatched to save victims from the debris and the biting cold. Rescuers used high-powered heaters on those that were trapped. 11 people survived with injuries and 39 others died. Russian investigators ruled the probable cause to have been a gas leak, but a news website called Znak.com released a story claiming the explosion had actually been planned. Through their own investigation, they believed a man living on the second floor had been storing explosives for a planned attack on a nearby shopping center. Officials vehemently denied the claim and maintained that no remnants of explosives were found. Number 4. Notre Dame de Paris. In 2019, for the first time since 1803, the Notre Dame Cathedral didn't host Christmas Mass. It was still being restored after suffering a terrible fire that had broken out months before on April the 15th. At the time, the cathedral had been undergoing an extensive restoration project which greatly heightened the risk of fire, an aspect of which officials were aware. The Paris Fire Brigade had been drilled specifically for emergencies, and a fire warden was sent to check beneath the roof 3 times each day for any sign of a flame. Even with their due diligence, the fire that broke out wasn't caught right away. It originated in the attic just before 6:20 p.m. The fire alarm went off, causing guards to evacuate the cathedral and send for someone to investigate. Unfortunately, having been sent to the wrong location, the investigator didn't find the fire, and 15 minutes passed before the error was discovered. The fire brigade didn't arrive until 7 p.m., over 40 minutes after the fire had started. The blaze raged on, uncontrolled, for another hour and 45 minutes. It caused extensive damage, all but destroying the cathedral's spire, roof, and upper walls. Just 2 days after the fire, over 1 billion euros had been donated towards its restoration. Investigators never conclusively found the cause of the fire, but believed it was started by a cigarette butt or a short circuit in the electrical system. To learn more about the Notre Dame fire, check out PBS's fascinating documentary, Saving Notre Dame. You'll get a first-hand look at the cutting-edge technology that researchers and engineers are using to restore the 850-year-old cathedral. A link to it is available in the description below. Number 3. Apollo Theatre. Hosting a performance of The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime, the Apollo Theatre in London was packed with 730 attendees on the night of December the 19th of 2013. Approximately 40 minutes into the performance, part of the 113-year-old ornate ceiling crumbled and fell on top of dozens of unsuspecting audience members. 110 square feet of the ceiling had fallen, tearing down a lighting rig and a portion of one of the balconies. 2 people had to be rescued from under the fallen balcony. 88 people were injured, of which 7 were considered severe. An investigation into the accident found that the large timber frames in the theatre's suspended ceiling were only held together by hessian and plaster ties, never replaced or fixed since its grand opening in 1901. The ties had degraded to the point of failure. The theatre was partially reopened 3 months later, while the investigations were still ongoing. Today's topic was requested by the Disco Time Lord, Prin 3951, and The Last Ender. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. 20 Fenchurch Street. Named after the street it was built on, 20 Fenchurch Street is a 38-story commercial skyscraper situated in the financial district of London. Fully constructed in 2014, the $275 million building received the nickname the Walkie-Talkie due to its distinctive top-heavy shape. Unfortunately, along with being a defining artistic piece, it was discovered that the concave curvature also concentrated sunlight into a type of death ray. The walkie-talkie soon turned into the Scorchy-Talkie or Fry-Scraper to locals who reported incidents of storefront carpets and doormats catching fire. The intense heat caused doors to char, tiles to shatter, and partially melted a man's Jaguar parked across the street for no more than 2 hours. The damages were in the hundreds. Building developers apologized and paid for the repairs, but people demanded something more be done. One reporter famously fried an egg in a pan on the ground outside, and eventually a permanent awning was installed over the south side of the building. It marked the second time well-known architect Raphael Vignori had made this large-scale error. His design of the Vdara Hotel and Spa in Las Vegas resulted in some beams being reflected on the pool deck, causing dangerously high temperatures. In 2015, 20 Fenchurch Street won the Carbuncle Cup for the ugliest building built in the UK. Number 1. Champlain Towers South. Just north of Miami Beach, Florida, in the community of Surfside, a 12-story beachside condominium partially collapsed in the early hours of June the 24th of 2021. In less than 12 seconds, over half of the 136 units were completely destroyed. About 80 search and rescue teams were dispatched immediately to scour the rubble and evacuate the rest of the building. 10 people were treated at the scene and 35 people were successfully evacuated from the remaining structure. However, by the afternoon, amid fears that the debris was too unstable, rescue efforts were put on pause for 14 hours. A week on, the emergency decree was still in effect and many areas of debris had to be left untouched by search and rescue teams. Of the estimated 160 people in the affected units, only 33 were accounted for. 22 had died and 11 were injured, while 126 were still missing. Faced with an impending hurricane, tensions were high towards finding the victims and safely demolishing the still unstable, partially standing building. Investigations into how the condominium had collapsed, seemingly at random, revealed a multitude of potential warning signs. In 2018, an engineer found major structural damage due to improper waterproofing around the pool deck. Condo owners were facing $15 million in repairs, but the job was suspended in October when the degradation of the surrounding concrete proved to be far worse than expected. While investigators tried to pinpoint the exact cause of the collapse, the mayor instated a citywide review of all buildings over 3 stories high and/or 30 years old. Within a week, a condominium just 20 minutes from Champlain Towers was found to be structurally and electrically unsafe, and its residents were evacuated that same day. Thanks for watching. Would you rather try and escape a skyscraper on fire or a boat that's sinking in the middle of the ocean? Let us know in the comments section below.